A rum!
Sorry. Stacy's a little excited this morning. You know how toddlers can be.
What did she just... How much is this gonna cost?
Well, it won't be cheap.
For $2 a month, Patreon supporters can get access to ad-free episodes as they're released. For $5, you'll get those episodes and bonus content as they're edited, along with my DM's notes.
For $10 a month, you'll get print-ready maps of our encounters, character sheets of all my NPCs, bonus content from our episodes, and early access to upcoming Kill Every Monster adventures.
You can also listen to early, uncompressed, ad-free episodes and bonus content by subscribing to Kill Every Monster via Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts right now, you can sign up for a 7-day free trial with just a click.
Want a free way to help the show? Give us a review. Written reviews are amazing, but even clicking 5 stars is a huge boost. You can leave reviews for the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Podcast Addict.
Find all the ways you can support the show at killeverymonster.com.
My name is Aram. I'm the writer and producer of the actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast, God's Fall.
My name's Dylan. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a physicist from Canada.
Welcome to Kill Every Monster. This time on Kill Every Monster, we are featuring the Couatl.
The Monster Manual describes Couatl as benevolent serpentine beings of great intellect and insight. Their brilliantly colored wings and gentle manner speak to their celestial origins.
Couatls were created as guardians and caretakers by a benevolent god not worshipped since the dawn of time, and which is forgotten now by all but the Couatl themselves. Most of the divine mandates given to these beings are long since fulfilled or failed. However, a number of Couatls still watch over ancient power, await fulfillment of prophecy, or safeguard the heirs of creatures they once guided and protected. Regardless of a Couatl's task, it prefers to remain hidden, revealing itself only as a last resort. We are joined by Carlos Cisco. Carlos, whose pronouns are he, him, is a newly minted narrative designer with work on the DM's Guild, #iHunt, and in MCDM's ARCADIA. Or it feels new, because time got real elastic during those early days of the pandemic. His primary craft is television writing, but unlike design work, his ascent was not quite so propulsive, spending the last decade clawing his way up the ladder to find himself recently as a writer on Star Trek Discovery. In the immortal and often maligned words of the Enterprise theme song, it's been a long road getting there from here. He can be most easily found on Twitter at Carlos_Cisco. Welcome to the show, Carlos.
Happy to be here.
I'm going to point out that we are going to need this one to be two-pronged, Carlos. What is a Couatl, both to you and just like in general for the audience?
Base thing, when you're looking at them, they're these sort of large wing snakes. You know, the Couatl was always an interesting thing to me because the art in it is so goofy in the AD&D Monster Manual, and it's described as this like beautiful celestial thing, and I was always like, what is this like weird little like hairy wing snake? But it was actually the first thing that sort of led me into like Mesoamerican mythology and stuff like that. Because like I was, you know, as a kid, like I feel like most gays, really into Greek and Egyptian mythology. And, you know, this was actually the first window into sort of, you know, I'm Mexican American. And so this was like the first window into a mythology that was not just sort of, you know, Western European. it kind of snowballed from there because like I started recognizing more things pulling from it. Like I remember in Final Fantasy VII, there was the Quetzalcoatl summon and stuff. And so that sort of, kind of reminded me, but it's kind of a weird thing because like I've never used one in a game ever. I think with most celestial creatures, they're kind of hard to use outside of some sort of like guide. And then it's like the stat block isn't that useful in that sense because then I can sort of use it however I need to. As far as a lot of D&D cultural appropriation goes, it's fairly benign.
Yeah, it's really benign because there's nothing there.
Yeah, but it's also presented even in like the mythologies that, you dip into the Forgotten Realms or the Eberron mythology, and they're still sort of used in a similar way to how they were known in Aztec mythology as sort of these like creators. D&D definitely has its share of very offensive cultural appropriation or, really misogynistic tropes. But like for this one, to me, it doesn't raise my hackles in the way that like I look at other things and be like, that's bad, you guys.
In essence, it's a big, pretty, winged snake who's really nice.
Yeah.
There's all these parts where it's like it thinks forever and has these long, drawn-out plans. But if an adventurer can't plant some corn, it's going to pop out of the jungle and be like, here, let me help you, right? Does kind of imply that they like take a long time to get things done. I'm not so sure it takes a long time for the task. I think they're all ADHD and they're just any distraction pulls them off track for like a year, 2 years, and finally they get back on.
When you have like a, multi-thousand-year worldview, taking a couple weeks out to help that peasant ain't no thing.
On the topic of timescales, I want to call out what I think is the weirdest choice they made in the 5e entry, which is calling out a celestial being's reproductive habits. The gem egg doesn't necessarily bother me so much as the fact that, like, it's a celestial being. Why did you have to specifically call out?
Because they can steal the egg, because it gave you something to steal.
So for the benefit of the listeners, it calls out that they all know, give or take 100 years, that they're going to die. They get basically the little precog flash of like, oh, I'm on my way out. And when they realize they're going to die, there's a conservation of Couatl, so they have to find another one, make their little gem egg.
This is an example of the worst possible kind of parent. The parent who's gone through their life and at the last minute is like, oh, I've left things undone, so I'm going to have a child, and then push all of my bullshit onto them.
Okay, so why hasn't there been a published adventure specifically focused on getting this Couatl laid? Like, honestly, like that...
If we don't get the Couatl laid, we can't hold back the seal.
Yeah, like you have to, exactly. Like this Couatl has like this most important task of like, whatever it's doing is the key to keeping the, the abyss from just pouring into the material plane. And if you don't get this Couatl to fuck, it's over. It's over.
That should have been the adventure. Just me and the Couatl at a bar. Trying to find someone to fertilize her egg.
And then my next question is just looking at sort of the wording of this is it doesn't say anything about sex in terms of and I mean that in like biological sex. So could it be any two Couatls? Does it have to be a male and a female Couatl?
Oh, I would say no, because yeah, you're right. There's no sex. There's just a sharing of magical energy. I don't see why two male Couatls couldn't make a little gem egg.
I don't see why they have gender. They're snakes. I know that snakes technically have sex and all that stuff, but they're flying wizard snakes. I don't think they care.
You mentioned the art in like 3rd edition. It was weird. The art in 5th edition is fine. At least it's rainbow. Like, it's not even a rainbow in 5th edition.
Well, but I was looking at it and I was like, I kind of dig this because like their wings are kind of in the color of a Mexican flag.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like,
I mean,
cool. It's real subtle, but I was like, okay, that's, yeah. But the art is, I think, I like a lot of the 5e art, but it's sort of, it's a winged snake.
It's like they tried to make it look a little tough. And I don't think that's the vibe you want to go for. Like, they should feel ethereal. They should feel like rainbow tissue, right? But are incredibly strong when it comes down to it. I mean, a strength of 16 is not small.
I always feel like they're supposed to be a lot bigger than they are.
Yeah.
As a medium creature, they just seem, I don't know. I mean, maybe I just haven't seen enough really large snakes, because I feel like a medium snake would actually be quite intimidating.
To me, at least, when I think of size categories, I think about the space that it occupies, not necessarily its actual dimensions. A medium creature might be 6 feet tall. I don't think we're talking about a 6-foot snake. We're talking about a snake that occupies the space that a 6-foot tall man would. So, like, it's coiled onto itself. It's got its fucking big ass wings spread out. I'm willing to bet that this is maybe like a 25-foot snake.
Okay, that's terrifying.
It's just that, like, if you put it on the ground and it wasn't using its wings, it's coiled up, it's standing like, that's guy size, that's not that scary. And then it takes off, and you're like, oh, that will, okay.
And they are very long and very feathery, so that does fit in with the design. Like, it could shrink down to a very small size. Snakes are good at that.
The pride with which you said that.
Oh, I love that it's a good snake. You don't get good snakes. Like, there is nowhere in typical, Western mythology where there is hi, I'm here to help you. I'm the nice snake. It doesn't happen. So this is fantastic.
It is strange too. Well, not strange, but when you think about it, it's like when you see snakes, like, I think like the general sort of instinctual thing is, run away. So I think that's probably why.
The Witcher was talking about how, like, no one does insect monsters, right? There's not a lot of insect monsters, but there are in certain cultures. And when you take them literally, Jesus Christ, a giant insect is just terrifying. There's nothing to connect with.
Yeah, when you see like close-up pictures of beetles and their mandibles, you're like, no, that if that was giant, no. I mean, like, that sequence in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is a horror movie.
Horrifying, absolutely horrifying, yes.
I don't care if they become friends with that ant, it's terrible.
Even with a snake, there's still like, it's kind of like a human-ish face. Like, you can relate to that. There's something to connect with once you get over the initial terror of it being a 20-foot-5 winged snake.
Carlos, is the Couatl a monster?
Well, I mean, when we just talked about, the snake actually being like, 15 to 25 foot long, by the definition of a large, ugly, frightening thing, if I saw a big fucking rainbow wing snake, I'd certainly nope out in the other direction. But I think when you're looking at sort of the totality of what these beings are, that's sort of an unconcise way of just saying no.
End of the day, Couatl falls into a category that I'm just starting to call NPC monsters.
They are story monsters. They are there to generate story, not conflict.
Here's the thing that you give to your players if you ever need something to toss out a real quick cure wounds, give them a quest.
Oh, they're quest givers, 100%.
They're basically so ancient that most of the divine mandates given to these beings are long since fulfilled or failed. I always view any sort of celestial or fiend creature as sort of a really clever robot. Like, they're manifestations of just elemental energy, right? Like, an angel isn't a creature, it's good walking around. Same with the devil.
It's a celestial construct, basically.
The idea of Couatl wandering around with, like, impossible to fulfill or expired rules, I love it. I think that's fantastic.
I think, too, it actually lends itself, if you wanted to use a Couatl as a villain in some way, these sort of expired edicts that don't make sense in the modern world, whatever our sensibilities are, could be a good way to use it. Because I'm always interested in, like, one of the reasons I think the Celestials don't get used is oftentimes, we are the good guys fighting the bad guys. But I think, and you were just talking about, Dylan, these creatures, celestials and fiends, are essentially, elementals, but for good or for representing good or for evil. Obviously a little more cognizant, but it is sort of like interesting in that way that, like, that there is sort of baked into D&D a lack of moral relativity.
Yeah, right.
But I think that's not how most people play. And I think that, like, Celestials are a really good opportunity to sort of test the bounds of what good actually means. I remember, back in the AD&D days, nobody wanted to play with a lawful good paladin because you couldn't do anything bad, and like they were always up on your shit. And so I feel like that's sort of a thing that you can kind of embrace in Celestials. Is lawful good can be interpreted in like a pretty like fascistic way.
The gods can be good or evil, and anything past that is a manifestation of will. An angel is lawful good because it came from a good god, so its edicts, like, it is not necessarily manifest good, it's manifest will from a thing that is definitively good. But that means once you've got that degree of separation, you introduce flaws.
Also, a detachment. Like, it may be lawful good, but a Couatl is going to be largely detached from humanity. We're talking about how to make a Couatl a villain earlier. What if there was a Couatl who lived at the top of this mountain and every season sent down the rains, sent down the storms, made sure that water got to the valley because it knew that the farmers down there needed it, right? Well, that city's changed. It's moved. The flood patterns have completely been disrupted because they moved all the land and they moved all the plants, and now they're just flooding it.
The dwarves built a dam, and now you can't get there, and there's just a Couatl sitting up there looking like, that dam's really preventing the water from getting down. I guess they need way more water so it gets over the top of that dam.
Right, exactly. Because they don't know. It just got in the way. So they're sending this cascading torrent of flood down on them every time.
I would change that, because saying they don't know creates that sort of like robotic ignorance that I think can work. Because that's the other thing you can always do with Celestial, and especially a devil, is arrogance. Is something that's looking down there and like, no, I have a perfect divine instruction that field gets this much rain. I don't care that you put a dam there. Are you a god? Well, you don't get to tell me what to do.
Are you the god of dams? I don't think you are. I don't think you're the god of dams. I think he just made one.
When it turns out that you're the god of dams, you can build an angel of dams to come up and have a fucking conversation. Until then, it rains. How would you change the Couatl in 5th edition?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier about messing up Celestials, and I think in general, the Celestials, Angels, Couatls, all of this sort of needs that Celestials in general need an overhaul to figure out how people can use them in their games, other than, as you said, like messengers or coming in to be a healer or, a divine guide for a thing. I think that like finding new and interesting ways to muddy up, and again, this is not directly Couatls, just the larger picture, but Celestials would be probably the thing that I would want to see.
And give them the ability to step back into the ethereal plane. Because if you have a creature that is this good, that is designed not to be attacked, basically, this is not a thing that is designed to be fought. It needs a way to escape. That thing should be able to jump into the ethereal realm and get away.
This is an interesting point, because there's been a lot of creatures that are designed to not fight. This is also a creature that's designed to not kill, because its bite attack has a poison effect, and that poison
put you to sleep.
Will put you to sleep while the poison effect is active, and the poison is one saving throw or be poisoned for 24 hours. Until the poison ends, the target's unconscious. You're out for a full day, and most things with an effect like that are written specifically such that you're like, oh, and if you make your save, then you're safe from this poison for a full...
Right.
No.
Not this one.
If it bites you and you don't go to sleep, it can try again until either you go to sleep or you die.
Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. Just biting you over and over. We're done, we're done, we're done, we're done.
Which ties in fairly well to the other ability, which is constrict, which is just squeezing them while quietly whispering to them over and over again, shh, go to sleep, shh, go to sleep.
They do have the ability dream, or the spell dream. So if you can make something go to sleep, that is hostile to you, and then enter its dream, so you can be like, buddy, let's talk. Come on.
Now that we're not swinging swords, what a great way to do it, too. Just like, nope, sorry, bite. Now we can talk.
Because like some parties just... There are some parties that are overly aggressive, especially if they see any kind of like non-humanoid monster, and that would be a good way to sort of, bridge the gap.
My name is Alejandro Torres. I have a master's in anthropology from the University of Illinois at Chicago. When I was there, I specialized in mortuary practices, and I studied specifically the population genetics of the classic Maya. I was looking at questions about ethnicity and the formation of group identities and kinship. Basically what I did was I used traits on bones, very discrete traits on bones, to actually get at discrete heritable traits that you can actually find on these bones to answer questions about population genetics and how people are related to each other, how people are actually moving across the landscape. And I did that all, again, in the classic Maya period context.
How would I more correctly pronounce Couatl?
It's pronounced Couatl in Nahuatl. And that's my Hispanicized Nahuatl. Like if we actually got an indigenous Nahuatl speaker, they probably say it differently too. That TL sound tends to throw people off, but it's okay if you pronounce it as Couatl. With almost like you're saying waddle, that's fine. But if you wanted it to be more accurate, it'd be Couatl.
What is the story of the Couatl?
These feathered serpents, they tend to hold a close association with rulership and fertility among various Mesoamerican cultures. Different archaeologists argue that they are crucial figures who help to legitimize the royal lineage of a particular ruler. They'll want to use these feathered serpent icons to align themselves with the most influential political powers of the time, or the most powerful or influential ancestors of the time as well. So they're adopting these supernatural feathered serpents as their ancestors, in part because they also see them depicted all over these abandoned Toltec sites. Because archaeology is not just something that's done now, right? People in the past were also able to access these ruined areas and see the art for themselves. Basically, at places like Teotihuacan and different Toltec sites, you see feathered serpents plastered everywhere. And as a result, they continue to be an important symbol for people. But as that feathered serpent image continues to spread out across space and time, people start to adopt different meanings and associations with them. In central Mexico, for example, the feathered serpents shed some of that association with water that we see earlier on in the archaeological record, and they take on a stronger association with wind, the morning star, Venus, and the sun as well. And by the time of the Spanish conquest, their original older watery origins have taken a back seat to these newer meanings. But the feathered serpent continues to retain these watery associations among communities that have strong ties to bodies of water, such as lakes, rivers, and water-filled sinkholes that we call cenotes. People, when they think of feathered serpents, are probably immediately going to think of the deity Quetzalcoatl or Quetzalcoatl, who has their origins in the Maya region. He takes on different names. You hear Gucumats, Cuculcan. I've also recently, just in preparing for this interview here, I found out that some Guatemalan Maya groups also call him Volcan, which is crazy to me because that just literally means volcano in Spanish. He has a very strong association with the creation of people, especially with the Central Mexican creation myth of the five suns. He actually is one of the deities involved in the final sun. So in the final world, after people and the world have been created and destroyed 4 times before, people's bones are residing in the underworld.
The old gods gathered to share their sorrow at the absence of their creatures. We brought the earth and sky back together and made them whole again. But what good is it all without anyone to live there? Who will worship us? We can't let things go on like this. But the humans were all dead, killed when the 4th sun fell in a torrent of rain, and the dead were far away, hidden deep in Mictlan, the land of the dead. The lord and lady of that cold, dark, silent realm now kept their bones as treasures. Without the bones, there could be no more humans.
And Quetzalcoatl and one of his brothers attempts to actually steal the bones from the Lord of Death.
Quetzalcoatl, his wise old face wreathed in a beard of brilliant feathers, said,
I am Couatl, the morning star. Every morning I lead the sun back out of Maligned to be reborn with the dawn. I know the way out of the land of the dead, and will guide us back home to Sweet Emotion.
And so they travel to the underworld, and he takes on this aspect, Couatl. It's an aspect of Quetzalcoatl where he dons this mask with his beak, and it lets him control the wind much more powerfully, and he's able to snake his way down through the treacherous underworld and steal the bones of humanity so that people can be reborn and reshapen. But because of the fact that he is going down to steal the bones, they come back to the earth, all in these different rough shapes and with different cracks and fractures. And so people are recreated once again, but they come in all different shapes and sizes. Feathered serpents are actually still remembered by indigenous communities today as well. In the southern state of Chiapas in Mexico, various ethnic Maya groups still talk about these supernatural creatures whose job it is to protect and purify water sources, because these are the water sources that these communities rely on for their survival. In eastern Chiapas specifically, the Lacandon Maya at the town of Metzabac, they still tell stories of a giant aquatic creature who protects their water and makes sure that the lake never completely dries up during the dry season. In this particular community where I work, local people would tell me when the water level dries up just enough, when the dry season is just bad enough, the water level will actually drop far enough down that you can actually get a glimpse of this ancient rock art of the water lily serpent, a specific variety of the feathered serpent that has these nice crests on its head and on the back third of its tail. You see the water lily pad on its forehead. It has a crest. It's also got like these fish, these like cool little spotted fish on the front and the back, just kind of like chomping down on parts of its like feathers and things like that. When the water level actually gets low enough, you can see this rock art, and it's rock art of these two water lily serpents actually facing each other. I think a lot of us, especially in the US and in other places where we're not worried about our sources of drinking water, we're not worried about how clean our water is, whether or not we're going to get sick when we drink water. We really could take away those lessons from the Couatl, because that's kind of their job.
Do you think Couatls are monsters?
Oh no, they are not. For a lot of indigenous groups, they are tied to, or they were tied to, the creation myth for those people. They are responsible for the creation of humanity. So in a way, they were intrinsically tied to the people who venerated them in their community. They were also tied to the landscape, because remember, again, they were responsible for bringing water and protecting sources of water for the people. So they were not monsters at all for the people living today. We don't start to actually see Couatls being thought of as monsters until by indigenous populations, specifically in Metzabac. Actually, I'm talking more specifically from my experience having worked with the Lacandon Maya. They don't start thinking about serpents as dangerous creatures, monsters, until after they've been colonized and after they've been evangelized. One of the elders at Metzabac, Jose Valenzuela, one of the community elders who had actually signed the treaties with the Mexican government, had told us about the stories of the serpents and how they were these protective beings. But then also on the flip side, once we got away from talking about specifically the protective creature of the lake, and we just started talking about serpents in general, they were very dangerous. They were venomous. They only brought death. They were bringers of death. They were no longer bringers of life, water, or like wind or anything like that, controllers of the weather. they were now just bringers of death. My colleague argued heavily that had to have come from later colonization efforts changing ideas behind the Couatl.
Dark Dice is a free horror actual play podcast.
With Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, Aram, with Jeff Goldblum.
Sorry, just, life finds a way.
Episodes are short, averaging 30 to 45 minutes long, cutting out the table talk to focus on the story and the characters. They feature an immersive sound design that edits combat to be enjoyable while staying true to the dice rolls.
6 travelers embark on a journey into the Dead Pines to find their town's missing children. They will never be the same again. A sinister creature that can take the form and voice of the heroes infiltrates their mist. As it kills and replaces them one by one, the creature, now controlled by the players, seeks its next victim. Can our heroes find out who the monster is before it's too late? Can you?
Jeff Goldblum has joined the cast as an elven sorcerer named Balmer. Episodes with Jeff are already out.
Dark Dice is available for free anywhere you listen to your podcasts or at darkdice.com.
It has been a long trek. The Valley of Embers is not a pleasant place to walk through in the best of days, and there's that constant fear. There have been long rumors of a dragon that hunts in this territory, so every shadow, every cloud is a minor panic attack.
I imagine it'd be hard to fly in this ash and heat too. We probably just spend a lot of time walking, which is not something Aarakocra enjoy doing.
That's the thing. That's the bit that makes it painful, is knowing that dragon is out there. This is a place where you shouldn't fly. The thermals here, the updrafts you can catch from the sheer amount of heat, this should be glorious.
Yeah, it's like birds over a highway.
Yeah. The only thing you would complain about is if you get up there, the smoke and the ash would get into your feathers and you'd have to clean it.
I do imagine we do spend a lot of time preening. Like, they don't really talk about that in the Aarakocra book, but we've got to clean those feathers every day.
Oh, it's 4 hours of their long rest is spent cleaning themselves.
Yeah, they don't bring up the same rules as an elf. It's only like 4 hours of sleep.
I can only do a half watch, guys. I've got to preen. We know this.
And they're actually really terrible traveling companions, because unless you just put drape a cloth over their head at night, they just squawk at indeterminate hours. It's really disruptive.
It's got one of those little face masks.
Yeah, exactly. Like a falcon hood.
Passing through the valley, you come to this massive tunnel leading deeper into the peaks of flame. You're close to the middle of Chult, in a place that it's held holy by the Yuan-Ti. It's revered. They don't come here. They hold vigil over this land, but they don't get into the shadow of the mountain. They know the serpent deep down in there, she's waiting. And this is a place only for her. They warned you not to come here. Some of them tried to stop you. Yet here you are. Being generically bird folk, being an Aarakocra and an Owlin, the idea of a tunnel is always a little off-putting. Nobody likes being closed in. So when the mouth of the cave is a 50-foot diameter, it's hard to decide if that's comforting or not.
As a scout, as an Aarakocra scout, this is a bit beyond my knowledge. I have good knowledge of the forest and nature and what I need to be able to survive and figure things out. But as far as a giant hole in the side of a mountain, that's beyond my knowledge. Maybe not for my friend, though.
Yeah, so I sort of, that weird bird walk where they sort of half hop sort of over towards the wall of the cave and kind of look at it.
The first thing that you're sort of looking for, being as this is going directly into the side of a volcano, is basically any signs of lava flow. Looking for those sort of igneous formations that you get as lava sort of cools and dries out. Not dries out, that's completely wrong. Jesus Christ, that's not how lava works. It ain't wet, guys. It's not like the stone got dissolved and heated up.
Nice recovery. Threw in some science there just so people would know that you know your shit. Good job.
Yeah, it loses some of the effect when I'm throwing it in there to be like, hey, did you know I'm a moron? Yeah, so you're looking around for these little igneous formations, those giveaways of like lava flow, because that would be the first sign that this is a bad idea.
Well, only if it's an active volcano.
And, the smoke and the sputtering at the top sort of imply. Yeah. This is a D&D world. You don't put volcanoes that are inactive in a D&D world.
Of course not.
Everything in D&D exists for plot purposes, and inactive volcanoes don't create plots.
Unless you're like going into the caldera for some reason, because there's something in there. There's always, okay, anyways.
Yeah, we'll talk later.
Back to the rocks.
Anytime a DM would describe a volcano as inactive, I would immediately be like,
sus.
Okay, for now. You didn't add for now, DM, but we know it's coming.
The thing that you notice when you're looking at like sort of deep features is the way this is sort of scarred up. It looks sanded, something hard and coarse. But the places where the edges should be, the places between those gouges, are smoothed over. Whatever created this scraped it, but it did it so long ago that you have to look for those features.
And so I'm gonna, I have like a fancy, kind of walking stick staff thing, and I'm gonna tap the wall and just sort of pretend like I'm listening to it. And I'm gonna look over at Use, my traveling companion. I'm gonna say, "Do you hear that?"
Use turns. He's a very typical, eagle kind of Aarakocra. His feathers are all very tan and white and yellow, and his big beaked head turns to you, and his large ember eyes narrow. And he listens. But he does not hear. He hears the cave, maybe some water, maybe some stones and the wind just beyond the entrance. But that is all that I hear.
Use. You will need to learn to listen to the stones, to many things that you, as a being of the air, are not used to listening to. Your journeys will take you many places.
Use listens to Sansei's words. Owlin have always been creatures of wisdom. We seek you out when there are questions we just don't have answers for. Listening to rocks is an odd thing for me, but I do remember flying past mountains, hearing the winds whip through the peaks, hearing the song of those stones. If those stones can sing, then maybe these stones can speak, but it's just very quiet, and he really has to listen. So he pulls in his wings, closes his eyes, and grows very quiet, and tries to hear what it is you're telling him to hear.
I want you to give me a perception roll, Aram.
+5. That is a 2. That is a 2 + 5 is 7.
Not a goddamn thing. You haven't fucking learned You bring along a guy specifically for wisdom, and you haven't listened to a fucking word.
I'm listening. Listening and absorbing are different.
Yeah, just doesn't hear anything. Nothing. It's just no intake. And so I'm gonna look at him understanding this, that he's just not hearing what I'm trying to tell him, and that this has sort of been a repeated trend throughout the entire journey, which may be why we've lost a couple people too. I don't know. I don't want to place blame on anyone, but it wasn't my fault.
Did you say it out loud? Turns around like, hey, that was personal.
This combat's starting real early.
No, I wasn't saying that in character. That's just, you know.
D6 psychic damage.
Perhaps if I wasn't so, as we call it, pigeon-headed, I would have seen these things by now.
Do you think a pigeon is the bird equivalent of a bull?
I think a pigeon is stubborn. Dumb and stubborn.
I'll give you that.
But strangely resilient.
Well, that's the only reason. Like, if you're that dumb and stubborn, you should be dead. You're not because you're resilient.
All right. Anyway, you continue down. There is probably an hour's worth of tunnel. This is a point where you're starting to get lost. Not because you don't know where you're going, your sense of direction is phenomenal, but you know how long an hour, like what distance an hour covers from the air. Walking down and into a tunnel and trying to track where you are on the surface, you don't know. You could be past the mountains. It feels like you should be past the mountains, but if that were the case, you probably should have caught fire.
Without the air passing over our feathers, without the room, without the light, it's really hard for us to judge anything down here, I'd imagine.
That's the thing. The air does pass over your feathers. It's bad. It smells acrid. It's hot. It's just anything that managed to get through the tunnels that came down this steep is getting heated, and it's getting dragged up the tunnel. It is fleeing, just like everything else. Nothing seems to come down here, and the only thing that is stone and air, and the air is trying to leave.
I can't imagine Yus would pick up on any of that, but Sansei might.
But I feel like Sansei already knows that this is a bad idea.
Yeah, I think my feathers are definitely ruffled.
The owl head just keeps rotating on.
It's just. But I'm gonna, as we're sort of walking down the tunnel, and starting to just sort of feel this, passing through my feathers, I'm gonna look over to Yus and say, "We've come a long way, and you've sacrificed much, but are you prepared for what we find below?"
Takes a few steps quietly, thinking about those words. Thinking about the village that he lost, thinking about everything that's been taken from him recently. And he nods, and he realizes he's ready for anything, because there's nothing else left for him, just this path forward.
I assure you, I am ready.
That is some phrasing that is concerning. There's a simple word choice. There are people who see a path ahead and a path forward. There's a choice that's already been made.
Knowing sort of what is in his rapidly beating bird heart, I sort of look again over to him and say, "Why are you doing this?" And I mean, I know why, but before we descend much further, I think you should really hear it for yourself again, why you've brought us all this way.
Because I was given a great responsibility, and I failed.
You were a scout, not a warrior.
One has scouts, so they do not need warriors. We are the ones that keep the threats out of the village, away from our trees. Once warriors are employed, we have failed.
And he just keeps staring down this hall. He's now looking like into the darkness, but through the darkness. Like he's got that 1,000-mile stare. There's something at the end of this tunnel, and he believes it's his salvation, and he just can't take his eyes away from it.
To undo things, we shall see what awaits us at the bottom of the tunnel.
We shall, my friend. Together.
You continue down for time. The references are gone. There's not light. There's not, like, the temperature doesn't change. You can't feel, you can't hear as the animals shift, as you go from, like, those quiet prowling predators to just crickets. But eventually, you hit a point. The tunnel doesn't change. There isn't an opening, there isn't a room. There's a massive wall of iron. The only thing that calls it out is a door. There are two things. There's a massive seam up the middle, where it's clearly two pieces pressed against each other firmly. And then there's a feeling. A feeling of past. Just that wall, you look at it and you can feel it. Something back there is dragging you forward. There is something on the other side of this wall. And every time you try to form the word wall in your head, it just gets overwritten. It is not your thought. It is an item being struck from the record and replaced.
Door. Door.
Meanwhile, Carlos, in Sanse's head, you knew. You knew already what it was. And instead of that feeling of something being struck and replaced, it's the low hum, just agreement. When you think of what might be past that, of the danger it could hold, of what it could do, there's just almost a chuckle. Yes. There's one irregularity. There's one thing throwing you off on all of this. One thing that stops you from thinking, sliding door, just hands up, push to either side, it'll slide open. That's a rock. Big fucking rock in the middle of the door. Not a gem, not a stone. It is dark, not quite black. It's not, it's not obsidian. It is stone, but it is heavy. There's a weight to it. It is probably 15 feet up, and it's maybe 8 inches across.
It's like a cantaloupe.
Yeah, a rectangular cantaloupe. Thanks for that one.
It's like cantaloupe size.
It's like one of those watermelons grown in a square, like little.
Yeah, it's like a square watermelon. Don't be a
great.
jerk, Dylan.
Cool. So now we have a frame of reference. It's a square watermelon-sized rock.
It almost looks like it's basically placed up there, holding the two chunks together. And that weight, just like I said, around this is an uncomfortable feeling. Imagine our age feeling something for the first time.
Right. Like a seventh sense just popped up, right?
It isn't
or sixth
real.
sense, I should say.
It can't be, because by now
up.
I've experienced, life in general. I know all of the things I can feel. So whatever this is, it's not right. It's fake. It's not.
It's just some unsettling thing.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm out of my depths, quite literally. But I would say that I have listened to my friend Sanse, maybe not as much as I should have, but I have heard some things, and they did tell me to listen and to hear more. And so that's what I do. I walk up to the door, I cup my feathered hand, and I place my ear to it, and I listen.
Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna have you make a wisdom save.
Wisdom save +2. 4 + 2 is 6. My rolls are garbage.
Aram, tell me about the last nightmare you had.
Oh, it's the same nightmare. It's the same nightmare every single time. He's on the forest floor. He's looking up at the treetop canopies and homes of his people, and they are burning, and he can hear screams, but he goes to fly and he can't. His wings are burned. He's just trapped there on the ground, staring up, helpless, as his whole village suffers.
So you're down on the ground trying, like aching, just, you know the wings are gone, but all the muscles are pulling. You are trying to make those gestures, and it's just nothing. You can't make any progress. Sanse, Yus has flown headfirst into the ceiling.
Like a moth, just trapped against the ceiling.
Yeah, so I'm gonna quickly, spread my wings out, and as the sort of the owl wings spread, you can see the sort of the umbra of them is going down, like radiating from green to white to red, and he flaps his wings and he shoots up towards Yus and just puts a gentle hand on him before he tries anything like aggressive, just to see if he can be like, friend, are you okay?
And immediately you snap out of it, like you're waking up from a dream.
And I grab him quickly, like by the collar of his armor as he's starting to fall, I assume.
Like plummet 10 feet. Yeah. I imagine the startle reflex for birds is quick, right? You start flapping quickly, but I drop like 15 feet. Oh, God. And then quickly settle back down. I saw my people. I saw all of them. I could hear them, Sanse. I could hear them distinctly. Whatever is behind this door, it can fix everything.
It can undo everything.
Yes, it can undo everything. It can put it right.
Are you sure?
He looks back at the door, and he looks to his friend, and just the smallest bit of him is a little worried, but he shoves it down. He shoves it way down, because it's overwhelmed by this feeling of loss and desperation. And right up until this point, he wasn't sure. But as soon as he heard their voices, and he heard them behind the door, behind it, he's convinced this is the answer to everything.
Yus, we have come a long way together. You sought my help when there was nothing left for you. And I agreed to see this journey through to the end, but I must ask you again, are you prepared to undo everything?
He gets a little frustrated at that.
Of course I am. What have I gained? Nothing. I have nothing. Everything has been taken. Everything has been burned. Of course I will reverse it. Of course I will.
You have yourself. You have the memories of those you left behind. You have a culture to preserve. If you are the lone caretaker...
I am a scout, not a healer, or a leader, or a teller of tales, or a singer of songs. I am not my culture. I am a fragment. I am one feather from the wing. I have to do this, Sanse. I'm nothing without them.
I do not believe that you could have made it this far if you were nothing, with or without my help. What lies behind that door is not the answer you're looking for. It is just more questions.
Then I will answer those questions. This is the door. This is the path forward. We were brought here for a reason. This has to be true.
I mean, ultimately, the choice is yours. As I said, I would see this journey through to the end. Leaving this behind is only a lost cause. Only makes this a lost cause if you see it that way. There is a path ahead, but I do not believe it is behind this door.
Put out a hand. Put the hand straight to the door. Just slap it down. Can I feel anything?
You can feel two things. Power and death.
which is exactly what I would expect to feel in this situation. The power that can bring them back from that death. And I just quickly pull my hand away. It's there. I can hear them, Sansei. They're calling out to me. I have to open this door. And I would fly up to the rock.
I'm gonna stay down on the ground, but I'm gonna look up at my friend and say, are you sure you're not hearing what you want to hear? That whatever's behind that door knows what's in your heart and is telling you exactly what it wants, which is for you to open that door.
That little bit of doubt grows for a moment. It just swells in his mind, and he just clamps it right back down. And he looks at you, and he just shakes his head. Then we shall find a point of bargaining. And he slams his claws into that rock and grips it tightly.
And the moment you grab into it, it's like lightning. You grip and you squeeze as hard as you can, and then you squeeze harder, not willingly, as energy just courses into your claw and squeezes every muscle to the point where you think bones will break. And you see cracks start to form. And the voice, the same one that chuckled, the thing that keeps reminding you, not wall, door, tells you exactly what you know.
We will strike the record clean. It will all be undone. And we will begin anew.
And your eyes go from a wide slit to just a little flash of just direct snake eye. And that stone cracks under your grip. It shatters, and you're left holding this bar, an iron rod. There are two little hooks on either side that this bar kind of held between. And the moment that stone is shattered, you can just lift it up out of the slot and unlock the door.
So as I see the stone shatter, I'm gonna sort of shake my wings and point my stick up at him, and I'm going to cast Hold Person.
All right.
Make that wisdom save.
DC 14.
2 plus 9, 11.
You are going to take a d6 of falling damage.
Thud.
And I'm gonna release the spell after that.
So you're going to take 2 points of bludgeoning damage.
2 points of bludgeoning damage. Ow! And I just kind of look at you, just stunned.
That bar is still in place. The stone had shattered, and the moment it broke, that was when the spell went off.
What are you doing, Sansei? We're so close.
We are close, but this is not the choice that you should be making here. I have tried to impart lessons onto you to guide you in such a way that you would make the right choice for the good of all, not just for the good of yourself and those you care about.
This is my world, Sansei. It is the entire village.
There is a whole world out there. You have not flown but a day's journey from your roost. What do you know of the world?
I know that we sought nothing from this world, asked nothing from this world. And yet they sought us out and destroyed us.
And he's kind of circling around you now. There's like 10 feet away, and he's kind of walking carefully. He's got one wing open, and his feathers are reaching towards his crossbow.
I know everything I need to know about the outside world, Sansei. I know that they are killers and destroyers, and if they had found us earlier, they would have wiped us out then. And if I gave them a single inch, they would come for my throat too. That's what I know.
But there are also those who create things of great beauty, who love deeply. There is a whole sublime half to the abysmal that you refuse to see. And you would sacrifice all of that for ultimately nothing. Because what you seek to undo, Those things we wish for don't often appear in the way that we anticipate or would like.
Words are riddles, and I am tired of them. And I would just leap into the air again and go for that rock. It's all about getting that rock and getting out of this tunnel.
I'm going to try and just pursue after him.
Then I'm going to have you guys roll for initiative.
Initiative, I have a +3. 8 + 3 is 11. I cannot roll past 10, apparently.
This is text. 14. As I zip past you, flying up, you watch as the wings flap, and as there's a flutter of owl feathers as my body unfurls into the snake form, and I just sort of coil up directly on top of the thing. Most of my body is literally just on top of the rock, while the wings are just flying, and you just see the snake, the large snake head looking down at you. I'm gonna say, you do not want to do this.
My character must know what a Couatl is, or at least I've heard of them. They must have some, right, significant, or even that, just seeing a winged serpent. I would fly back. I would fly backward, but I'm hovering there. Do I know what a Couatl is? Everything I do next is going to determine, it's going to hinge on that.
I'm going to call this a religion check.
Natural 20.
Those history checks, or those religion checks, so rare.
I had a grandmother. I had this old, wizened grandmother eagle who would collect us all in her nest and tell us old stories. And the Couatl was my favorite. It was my favorite story. This is something that was just in my grandmother's dreams. This was never real. And now it's here, in front of me.
It was a story about redemption. It was the same source as the Yuan Ti, these creatures that have been enemies for years, that come after you, that are trying to stop you from scouting. And then there are some that were blessed with feathers and wings. Snakes that could fly. Allies. Just creatures of benevolence and truth. All in opposition to the night serpent. It is a creature of nightmares.
A liar. A liar who would show me this. And he goes to ready a crossbow.
Carlos, I'm willing to give you the transformation. It's just sort of like a free, while you're moving thing. It's just cooler that way.
Okay.
So do not treat that as your action.
The scales sort of flex on the body, and you watch as this sort of dust sort of shimmers out and covers the body as I cast Sanctuary. You do not want to fight me, friend. This will not end well for you.
Sanctuary is actually a bonus action if you want to do anything else as well.
No, I'm good. I mean, I'm trying not to, I'm trying one last time to not have to fight him in this situation,
I just got to give you the options.
Oh no, for sure.
In that case, Aram.
He fires an arrow.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Make a wisdom save.
13 + 2 is 15.
14 is my DC, so.
Just got it. Crossbow snaps up in an instant. Boy, is he fast with it, and fires a bolt at you that's a little larger than a bolt you'd normally see coming, and it expands into a net, and then just right around you.
Okay.
A larger, smaller creature hit with the net is restrained until it is freed. A net has no effect on creatures that are formless or creatures that are huge or larger. A creature can use its action to make a DC 10 strength check, freeing itself or another creature within its reach. So this shouldn't be hard for you.
Yeah. No, but it probably does make me collapse to the ground, right?
Yeah, it stands to reason.
Ties up your wings even for that split second.
You're going to take a D6. 3 points of bludgeoning damage.
We both took falling damage. Unlike Marvel, Dylan pays attention to falling damage.
This net unfurls, it catches, and your wings tangle. Every time you try to move, The problem with a net being a snake is like when you move and you bend, you just go into one of the holes a little bit and then you start dragging it around. Every motion you take moves the net more and tangles it more. Around that voice at the back of your head tells you.
They're here. They're on this side with me.
And after I fire that arrow, my move action is to go straight to the stone.
This thing is lodged in there. Years. Millennia. It's not going to be a trivial thing. It's going to take a pull. So I want you to make me a strength check.
I can't on this round. I have to wait till my next round.
That's fair. All right, Carlos.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take my action, I guess, and just like burst out of the netting. So I got a 12.
Oh, close.
Just barely. And then I'm gonna fly back up to you, but that's my action, I assume, right?
Yes.
Freeing myself from the net is my action. All right, yeah. So I'm just gonna fly back up and just again, and I'm gonna say, I plead with you. What you seek is not forward through this door.
He's got his claws in the stone. His wings are going. Your wings are going. We're like a foot apart, staring directly into each other's eyes. You say, opening this door, taking this power will unleash chaos? Let them all know how I've suffered, and just digs his claws into that stone. Strength roll?
Yep.
Well, I'm not unstrong. 16 plus 4 is 20.
And immediately, there's just this thud, a slam, as if something on the far side of the door is trying to force it open. This is not a door that opens like that, but the door shakes, and that little sliver, that tiny divide just widens by the barest increment.
As I'm holding this rock for a moment, I think in my head to that voice that I heard, what do I do with it?
You wait. I'll show you what you need to do.
Then he flies back a few feet with his movement and just hovers there holding the rock.
While you look, you see these flashes of purple light and darkness. These light, not quite screams, calls, yells, and flashes of darkness. Iridescent black scales moving on the far side. And so many more people who want to come home.
I can save so many people. This is why I'm here. And he would just clutch the stone tighter.
You can see on the far side this huge serpent basically slamming in and brushing against the doors over and over again, just trying to force it wider and wider. This abides by narrative logic in that if you put the stone back, it seals the door. You don't have to really pull it shut. It's a big magic door with a magic rock that seals the magic snake back into the death plane.
I'm going to wrap myself around you and try to drag you back down to the ground. So I'm going to make a attack. I assume a 24 hits.
Oh yeah, it's twice over.
So you take 7 bludgeoning damage, and you're grappled and restrained. And so I'm going to just pull you down to the floor of the cave.
Aram, you are stuck. Your escape DC is 15 for the record.
I cannot be the one to return that stone to the place that it belongs, but you can. You can make that choice.
It's true, he doesn't have hands.
I could hold it in my mouth, but it's awkward. It's really gonna have to be you.
It will take me a whole action to do that. Does it look like we have that kind of time?
Just put it back.
Just put it back.
So I've got the stone. I'm all wrapped up, but I'm still clutching this stone. Nothing has convinced me that this still isn't the reason to do this, or that, yes, sure, maybe there's a sacrifice, but it'll still work. And in my head, that's all I care about. So I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna try and break free.
We're going to call it athletics because D&D is always weird about, like, it would be athletics if it were contested, but since it's a DC to do the escape, I don't know if it's supposed to just be a raw strength.
It's athletics or acrobatics for defending, I think.
Natural 1, doesn't matter. How
Excellent.
did we even have this conversation?
Excellent.
There's something about holding this stone. I can hold the stone or I can have my strength. And holding the stone takes all of my strength and I just can't break free.
Like, look down at him with, like, my golden snake eyes, and I'm going to say, we're going to try this one last time. And I'm going to bite him.
Okay. You have advantage on this roll because he's restrained.
Okay, well, that's going to be a 23 to hit.
Might.
So you take 8 piercing damage, and you have to roll a constitution save or be poisoned and fall asleep.
Constitution save. All right, that is going to be a 1 plus 14. So, sorry, I rolled a 14. Sorry, that is a 14 plus 1.
Okay, well, it's a DC 13, so you just get bit, and you are not poisoned. And I'm just like, you know, if a snake can, like, huff in frustration, that's what I guess I hiss in frustration.
Blow your little cheeks out.
I'm gonna say, you just need to go to sleep.
And I can't move towards those snakes, just keep biting me.
Yeah. So that's my turn.
I'm gonna
bit
fail
him.
eventually. There, a 6, I failed.
Okay. Well, I mean, you could try to get free again if you want, but
I could, but
or
I
I could
think
just
that,
keep
like,
biting you.
He's just so focused on the rock and so confused at what is happening. I would just think you bit him, and then you guys just looked at each other because nothing happened, and they just bit him again.
Yeah. Okay. So as soon as he's unconscious, I'm gonna release him and sort of let him down on the ground. And then I'm going to sort of lean I'm gonna look at the door, sort of get a rough estimate of how much time I got here.
Well, given the size, like, you can see those scales. And once they're blown up to the size they are always like shark scales. They have enough texture that you can see, like, that is what touched every wall of this cavern. This is what, in the time before time, drug itself through this hole and tore it open.
You know, I don't know if snakes sweat, but I'm going to touch my forehead to uses, and I'm going to cast Dream.
Beautiful.
Okay, Dream, I think not a lot of people cast Dream. Let me just read this one real quick.
Never cast this spell before, so...
This spell shapes a creature's dreams. Choose a creature known to you as the target of this spell. Creatures that don't sleep, such as elves, can't be contacted by this spell. If the target is asleep, the messenger appears in the target's dreams and can converse with the target as long as it remains asleep. The messenger can also shape the environment of the dream, creating landscapes, objects, and other images. The messenger can emerge from the trance at any time, ending the effect of the spell early. The target recalls the dream perfectly upon waking.
And so I can shape the environment of the dream, right?
This is your holodeck now, Carlos. You can do whatever you want.
Yes, this is my holodeck. So
You don't know about telling stories involving a holodeck.
we're going to appear far above his ruined village, like our wings flapping. And I'm going to appear as the owl. But I want to show him what the world is 10 years in the future after he opens this door.
This is our It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, this is your Ghost of Christmas Future moment right here.
Nature's starting to reclaim things. The ashes are, like, long soaked into the earth. Trees are starting to sprout. And as you look past the edges of your village, you can see that that's true everywhere. You can see not a single fully grown tree. When you take a look down at the ground, you can see scarring. Something has torn up the ground. It's familiar, as if something wrapped around the dirt and just squeezed a little.
But it's been returned to nature.
Undone.
Everything will be undone. It will be born anew through the view of the night serpent, something that none of us should hope comes to pass.
There's just this sadness that washes over him. Just this deep, deep sadness when he realizes what this is and what's happened. Like he's walking through the forest and he's running his hands over these trees that has held his home, and he's looking up at them, and he can hear their laughter, and he can hear their whispers, but he knows they're not there. They're just not there anymore. And he turns back to his friend with tears in his eyes and just this broken look. His wings are sagging. His chest is heavy. What have I done?
Nothing that cannot be undone if you act quickly.
There was never any choice to make, my friend. Only the path forward.
And he would try and reach up through the dream. Like reaching up, pushing this rock out. He's trying to push out and towards the door.
And so with that, I'm going to release him from the dream.
He'd wake up, he'd see the door. It's like kind of cracked open now. Probably one big, huge serpentine, maybe a little tongue once in a while.
I will do this thing because it is right. But my path is still forward because that's where they are.
And a man. An arm reaching through. Every time it hits the ground, it's someone trying to crawl along the ground. They've squeezed their torso through and the arm is starting to slam. And every time it does, the dirt and the rocks on the ground do not budge. It fights for purchase and it tries to drag itself through. Just this manic expression as it looks up and just keeps repeating over, I said I would come back. I promised. I came back. I said I would get back to you.
That can't be good. So I would fly the stone up to the hole, and I would look at it, and I'd hesitate just for a second. I would turn and look back at my friend. Are you the owl now, or are you the Couatl?
No, I'm still the serpent.
Right. He would look at you, and he would nod. And he would slam the rock into the door, but he'd try to get through the door immediately afterwards. He wants in. If that's where his people are, then that's no matter what has befallen them, that's where he's going.
And whatever the instinctual equivalent from where I'm standing, but of, a mom putting their arm in front of a kid in the car, even though I know I can't reach him, just the sort of reaching out, but whatever this winged snake equivalent of that is, I do.
You slam this thing into the wall and it immediately elongates. It gets long enough to grab either side, to slip into those latches and to start pulling forward, and then I just want you to make an acrobatics check.
All right, come on. 18 plus 3 is 21.
There is a scream, a shriek in both of your minds. It is loud, and it blacks out the world. Sanse, you come to a sealed door, and just this green, transparent arm fading into ether, and you're left alone.
One single tan feather falling to the ground.
Not even.
Not even that. Not even, no trace of me. I'm just gone.
The arm fades back into the fugue plane, and you're left in this cave, staring down the door that holds the world serpent at bay, alone.
So I'm gonna, do this sort of snake equivalent of slump, and I'm gonna slump just back into the owlin form. I'm so tired of bringing people here. This is really just... And I'm gonna kind of look up at the sky and I say, the worst fucking mandate.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you for joining us for a DM deep dive into the Couatl.
We were also joined this episode by Alejandro Torres, an archaeologist, DM, and writer from Chicago. Alejandro is writing his own Maya-themed world setting and planning a podcast to discuss Mesoamerican representation and celebrate Latinx indigenous creators in the TTRPG space. He plays Milo the Halfling Fighter on the Ademo_AS and Morphos_XL Twitch channels every other Wednesday. He loves to chat about Maya archaeology, podcasting, and TTRPGs on Twitter at Tonal_Teca.
For more information about us, notes for each episode, and ways you can help support the show, head over to killeverymonster.com.
If any of the ideas we've discussed in the show have sparked some of your own, tell us about it on Twitter at KEM Podcast. You'll find me at Aram Vartian and Dylan at DJ Malenfant.
For ad-free episodes, early releases, bonus episodes, print-ready maps, my DM's notes, and Aram's character sheet for each encounter, head over to patreon.com/killeverymonster. You can also listen to ad-free episodes and bonus content by subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts.
Our theme intro and many of the sound effects you hear in the show were created by BattleBards. Check them out at battlebards.com.
This episode was produced by Aram Vardian and Dylan Malenfant. Aram also did the editing. Carlos Cisco was our guest. You can find him on Twitter at Carlos_Cisco.
If you are like me and all that information just fell right out of your head, you can find everything you need at killeverymonster.com.
And we'll see you next time
for Kill Every Monster.